4 right now.
It's a 4 of 4.
The DNS hasn't propagated. Yeah. How do you stop it from self-replicating? That's for an answer for you. How do we stop it from replicating?
It's like a virus.
How loose is everybody? That's maybe the bad terminology. How like what do people want to talk about AI? Sorry?
It's not 5 o'clock yet.
Okay, I knew whatever follow-on there was to that, probably not good. But yeah, like, what do you guys want to discuss, or like, what do you want to like talk like AI take over the world, or is it like why does AI suck for testing, or how to use it for testing? Like, what are you guys interested in? Any of it? Any of the book? Yeah. How to use it for testing? Yeah.
Free ChatGPT 3.5 account. What do I type in to get started? Like, I don't know what to do.
That's cool. Yeah, I can address it. And the only reason because I started doing the same thing. That's the cool thing. Everyone's like level set this year.
Yeah.
We're all kind of waking up to this new technology, right? The weirdest thing is, it's actually weird. It's like when you're presented with an empty text prompt, it actually is really intimidating from a user experience. They've been making it better though on ChatGPT. They're having little bubble suggestions of what to ask it. But specifically for testing, the funniest thing is whatever last testing problem you had or test case you executed, whatever, just type a description in it that's at least a few lines of text, and then just ask it what it thinks about that. Done. No, but that's a really good way to get her, because everyone goes like even some people that are supposedly great testers will go like, test the thing. And then it goes like, I am an AI model. I don't know what you're talking about and whatever, right? Because you didn't tell it. So the biggest advice to get started, I think, you have a good experience, that first experience testing from a testing perspective, is describe some testing problem or something you're just doing on the job or day in, day out or thinking about. And then just ask it what it thinks about that. Not even ask it to solve the problem or whatever, or elaborate. Just, what do you think about it? And it will start, probably like, I think you're talking about software testing and this is a problem and that you're encountering, and you may have tried this and you may want to try this, and might reference other methodologies or something. And then the second tip, I think, in getting started, a good habit to get going that I didn't have for months myself was having follow-on questions. Then everyone goes like, you ask a simple question, you get an answer, you go like, okay, but you treat it like Google search. Everyone's like, I put in the query and I got a result back. The real power of it is the chat part. And so you just ask follow-on questions like, oh, what do you mean about this methodology? Or can you just saying, can you tell me more, right? Or elaborate or something like that. And the thing will it's the most annoying tester on the planet in some ways. It's like the nerdiest tester on the planet. It'll just keep talking and talking like me right now, I guess. But I don't know if that's helpful or.
No, it is. And I'm trying to, in my mind, to figure out what's the bridge between starting out and doing that. Somehow, I don't know how, but you can point the AI at a website and say, generate test cases for this. What's that? That's a totally different tool. Is that something you can build yourself?
Yeah, you have to pay for that. No, okay.
Do you have to pay for that?
Well, no, I mean, I'm to be clear, I'm just one human being working with 3 wonderful chatbots over the summer and got stuff to kind of work to that level. So anybody can probably do it. There's actually, this is, I think that you just have to break the problem down. Like, just like we do with testing. Like if you have something you want to test or automate, or even just do exploratory testing for something, just describe what it is, what the thing is you're trying to do, and pretty verbosely, because imagine the thing just starting from zero every time. It's kind of reset, right? So you have to give it the context. And that could be multiple pages. You can copy paste the product description, and you can copy paste all your BDD stuff, your Cucumber things, or you can copy paste whatever into there. Or even now, which just as of last week, you can actually upload a screenshot of your application. It's maybe the best way now. That just changed last week. This stuff changes so fast. Take a screenshot of your app that you're testing if you're testing a web page. Even cooler, you can screenshot the documentation of the API or the specification for your API. If you're testing an API or even a diagram of a backend service, and just screenshot that, throw up and say, do you have thoughts on testing this thing, right? And it will start doing it. But as far as how to get it to do the end-to-end automation, kind of that whole thing, it's just the daisy chain you would imagine. So okay, you just keep digging and digging and digging to more and more granularity until you're down to a test step. And for example, if you want to click, sorry, I wish I told me this a few months ago, would have saved a lot of my life. But you can, if you just copy paste, like if you have the HTML for, say, the sign in button from the web page, just copy that. It's crazy. Everyone, like, you were even saying that a little bit, Jonathan, a little bit earlier. But it can generate test code, right? Selenium, Python, Java stuff. But but you have to really go in and fix and clean it up. You know why you have to fix and clean it up? Because some people don't copy the context into the chat thread. So if you copy paste the HTML snippet for the sign in button, and then you say click, write some Java, Python, Selenium stuff to click that thing, guess what? It amazingly gets the selector correct. It's crazy. You don't have to go in and manually annotate it or edit or fix it. So really it's just breaking the problem down to the point that you've got something executable and then execute it. And even super nerdy, and I'll stop on this. Just like the GPT, you just go down. It's an infinite regression, but there's also now plugins, but also ChatGPT is doing it themselves too, where you can run code execution. So for simple things that can be just run with Python today, like on a Python interpreter, you can say generate the code and then ask it to run it too. But really just copy paste that stuff and do a shell prompt and hit enter and you're good. And it runs, it'll execute and it'll launch and run the click that login button.
I got a follow on to that. So
yeah.
You guys have seen a lot of this prompt engineering stuff on courses and stuff like that.
Oh, the courses, yeah.
Those are, not very sketchy.
Well, I have my own course. No. There's only one that's good.
There is some good ones on Udemy, right? But I would go with the people that are practically using it. So there's a marketing guy, which is what I mentioned last time. There's a marketing guy who literally uses it to power like all the social media stuff. So he's like creating SEO stuff. He's creating, courses. He posted this morning. He's created books for adults in technology for companies. So the idea is it'll write a story about Jason with cartoons and stuff about his journey to this conference. And, part of it is it's just patterns that they're repeating. And I think that's the point. What Jason's pointing out is that, it's quite upsetting because you're looking at it's like your own browser history. You should never open up your own ChatGPT instance, right? It's shared, don't worry. That's my excuse. But literally, to Jason's point, it's like, yes, you can. The thing what I think most people get thrown off with prompt engineering is, in essence, that thread, what you're using is where you're refining. So there was I think the Samsung guy who I blame for 90% of the fake news, where he said, it gave me my code.
Yeah, talked about that one.
And he'd already passed it to beautify it in the first place. And he was in the same thread at the bottom of the thread. It didn't know his code. Yeah. It was literally passing it stuff in the thread. And that's why I mentioned about, I know it's wrong terminology, but I think about short-term memory, which is like AutoGPT. You've got this high-level
short-term memory
and long-term memory of a mission, right? So if you're trying to say to it, deploy my app into production, that needs a lot of different threads to go through. Whereas in actual fact, these threads here is, I can do my PNP installer to download requests. It's obviously decided to give me an API test because I didn't specify that I wanted a Selenium script or I wanted some Cypress or some Playwright script. Part of it is once you're in that thread, you get better as you go along. And I kind of was just doing it because I've kind of thrown this out. This is 3.5 Turbo, which is testers GPT.com. I'm just throwing it out, and it for people who don't want to buy a license of GPT or pay for it, you can use that. But, part of it is the other thing what I loved about, what I learned quite early on, and we talked about vector databases briefly for a second. You don't need to. You can literally paste it, a whole stack. So I've just pasted it, one of your articles from DZone about Gen AI. It'll read it, and all you have to do is say, I'm going to give you some information, I'm then going to ask you some questions about it. And you can literally Control-V, Control-P as many times as you want, and just say, add another page, literally pass all that information in, then say, I'm not going to ask you questions about nothing else. I don't care about what anybody else is saying about this. I'm just going to ask about, based on the articles that Jason's written, summarize it, tell me the top 3 things I need to think about, and part of it will just summarize that information. And that's more useful for you. Now, this is where I'd kind of, the warning, which you gave, the same warning, which is don't use GPT for anything sensitive at work, and yeah, GPT for all is not great. The great example would be go to Hugging Face, download an offline model, right? Go to the meta.ai, download Llama 2, right? You literally go to the website, they give you a key, you download it, it deploys it locally on your machine, and then you can feel free to then start passing data into that because it's controlled on your machine. Then you can start asking it, which you probably won't know, how do I test google.com? And it will run, and I think the model which I've got is Hermes, so it's only small. It's like 4 or 5 gig. And as you can see, it's incredibly slow compared to using 4, which is a bit slower than 3.5 turbo. But still, it's fast enough, right? So create a Selenium script to navigate to google.com. And straight away install Selenium, pick your Gecko driver or whatever Chrome driver. What do you want to tell them about the story of you breaking Chrome, Selenium for Chrome?
I thought it was broken on download. No, okay. I'm just picking on. I'm just Simon's out there.
Oh look, Chrome driver. Yeah.
No, but I would say real quick back to what you were asking too originally. Like, if you think it's a scam, it's a scam. And a lot of them are the same content, by the way. That's the other thing. I've seen people talk about the prompt engineering classes, and a lot of them say that they're all the same because they just copy paste each other's content. I did do on LinkedIn, and I don't get paid for it. But I did a post like last week or something that was kind of the summarization of the key prompts. I didn't call it prompt engineering because it's almost overused already. But just prompt, I don't know what it was. Something about prompting for testing. But it's the key prompting tricks and tips and tricks that I've learned over last summer that have been particularly when I'm trying to do testing things. So a lot of those prompt engineering things are like, well, how to write a great poem, or I'm a test nerd. That's all I use it for, right? So it's a bunch of things that are specific to testing. The other thing, if you really want to get deep on the prompting, I follow a lot of people on Twitter that that repost like the white papers from like Microsoft and these kind of places that are playing with prompt engineering, but not from a kind of a basic level, but like from a very scientific level. I hate the word scientific, but very formal process. Like there's things like there's really like a couple things to think about in prompt engineering that you don't even need to read all those prompt engineering documents. Just the funny thing is, just put as much context in there as you can. Like if you have a particular opinion about software testing philosophy, type it into the top and then ask your question. Like that's the easiest way to get the best kind of results. And secondly, there's this one methodology, everything's kind of a variant of it, which is called chain of thought prompting. The idea is that, but it's based on how the machine actually works, is you say, there's like, let's work on your horrible prompt, Jonathan.
Skeleton.
Which is help me test Google. And I don't think you can put a question on there, did you? Question mark. But be polite with it, use good grammar. But give it more context. But say like, think about the web page at google.com. Consider the functionality on the page. Consider the user interface of google.com. Then think about different test cases you could write, and then list the best test case, most important test cases that I should execute for that web page in priority order. That's a fantastic prompt. A, because I came up with it. No, but B, the real reason is that you're forcing the machine to say and think out loud what it's going to be doing, so that it can analyze that before it spews out what you want as the answer. So you're forcing it down a line of thinking. And then the second biggest trick with prompting, I haven't seen this actually in any of the paid ones, is whenever you get the answer, you often just copy paste. It's funny. Almost all my programmatic, like back to the question of how to get this to work in production, one of the most useful things I've done was, stumbled into was I auto read, it's embarrassing. When I get a response from GPT, I always respond back, hey, can you fix it? And then it has a chance to re-look at itself again, find any errors, and then give me the thing. Sometimes it says, looks good to me, Arbon, like, what are you bugging me for, right? And it doubles the cost of the tokens that I'm going to be burning of yours now that you shared your token. That was very sweet of you. But it can double check itself that way. And that's actually a very testing way to do things, I think, but I haven't heard that said anywhere else. But it's because the machine looks word by word by word by word. And so you really need that in the context. Because once it goes down a bad path, it's almost like a person that's, that once they say something that's slightly incorrect, they just keep going with it. That's usually how GPT goes wrong. Yeah, it's reinforced, exactly, yeah.
So are you better off with prompt engineering tips? Are you better off being very specific and detailed, like you were in your example, where you give like a paragraph of input, or are you better off going iteratively, like in the chat flow, this, and then going and then drill it down?
Right. So by the way, you've already burned 2 questions. I'm keeping track of stuff. No, the question is like, is it better to be very specific in your prompts and very procedural, or is it better to be open-ended and general? Sorry?
One giant specific, one giant paragraph input.
Yeah, okay, yeah, versus kind of bullet out. The more ordered, so ultimately the more ordered, actually, let me back up even more meta. There is no right way to use ChatGPT, to be frank. So you can do your own testing. I've done this kind of testing where if you give it a very structured input, like bullets and indents and paragraphs and things called possessive apostrophes, which I apparently never use and get in trouble for. If you use those things, and a thing called grammar, which is apparently a magic potion, if you use those, you will get a more reasoned, thoughtful, systematic response from the system. If you ask it just, hey, test google.com, it'll be like, yo, man, we can test google.com together. Because what you're doing, the funny thing, like, what's called prompting is you're saying something to make the AI talk back to you. And what it does great at, bear with me, just trust me, this is useful, I think. Again, probably talking too much, but like you can ask it, describe quantum mechanics as if you were talking to a 5-year-old. It does amazing jobs at it, right? It's great at it. But guess what also means? If you ask it a stupid question, it will give you a stupid answer because you're prompting that part of the brain that it has that answers simple questions and tries to dumb things down. So it's a mistake a lot of testers do, I think, is they ask a simple question and expect a very structured response back, or they give a very structured response and they want like a one-line answer. It really adjusts to you, the questioner or the prompter. So it depends what you want. If you want a big, long, formal-looking test strategy document, I would give the inputs in a structured, formal format as possible. But if you want to just brainstorm with it, I would be deliberately casual and deliberately maybe not even use some punctuation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that. So practically, the best way for you will be the combination of both. Just go into the specific and then reiterate. Because it's about how the machine understands this and transforms your context into what you're asking. So if you give a little question, very generic one, the next layers of the judge and with those so-called deployed neural networks, they try to enrich the context about the question. So if you give it a larger context in the beginning, it could form a larger vector of the information you're looking for. So that will be more specific into the things you look for.
Exactly, and you can go in your treasure. You can also, to be really retentive about it. Yeah, you can use precise language and then relax it and then precise again, depending on how you're exploring different avenues. Almost like you're kind of going through this mind map, this mental exercise. Yeah, again, super important. You said is the less context you give it, the more it will just assume.
Yeah.
Right. You go pages in all the general knowledge, and that general knowledge is the most popular, common knowledge of the planet.
And so,
You have to write some use cases, like for example, ATM.
Yep.
I'll probably give you like 10 things, and then you can drill down into each one of those.
Yep, that's how I use it a lot of times. You can also very specifically. Sorry, Jonathan.
no. That
I
was,
want to enable you to have time to talk.
no.
Because I know you didn't get enough time to talk to.
No, so we're going to definitely ask that question, answer that question in a second. So one of the questions that was just asked, right, which was, what would you recommend for somebody using Selenium, Java, TestNG framework, right? And I used this earlier on, right? So I kind of then said to it, how would you get reportportal.io to work with Selenium, Java, TestNG framework? And then, of course, straight away, it's reading his documentation, which I hope is up to date. It's giving the POM, so everything that I need to pull down, build the project, modify the tests to get that going. It's then saying, all right, this is how you run the tests using Maven, Gradle, or whatever IDE you want. Okay, you want to do some extra screenshot stuff and send that to Report Portal. These are what you also need to include. So it's giving you all the information there. And part of it is we've straight away, the only thing what I've done is I've started a new thread, right? Because, I want it to be clean. And the structure's pretty, as far as it's concerned, it's looking at, I'm hoping, docs.reportportal.io, right? And it's pulling the information off that and then looking for Java, TestNG, and it will eventually find the information, and it's now put it into a nice, easy format, right? So part of it is we've narrowed that quite quickly. However, when it comes to something more complex, like testing an ATM, like I love ATM testing. We're going to do it tonight because I know the loophole. I know how to get free cash out of the ATM machine, right?
Is that an invitation?
It is, yeah.
That's what we were doing in our hotel room last night.
It was, yeah.
Chat GPT.
So
Chat GPT.
I should not say this live on stream. So if you want to get free cash from any ATM, I'll tell you the loophole how to do it. And you can go and do it, right? Today, because I used to do the testing for that system, right? And all you do, go to one that doesn't have a camera, please, because I don't want to be responsible for people.
There's 2 cameras.
Well, minus those cameras. All you do is go to one that looks like it's like a beat out area with a rubbish ATM, put your PIN code in, and then just pick how much free money, right? Slightly depend on what bank balance you have, right? I'm going to take $500 out, so I'm going to take Costa out later, and and all you do is you just stand there. And you stand there and you hold the money until you hear the spinning. Now, the spinning doesn't really count money or anything. It's just a mechanism that humans help humans. It closes. You look on your bank balance, it will auto credit back in. Nobody knows the balance of an ATM because they swap out the 2 units. If you do it more than once every 3 months, your account will be flagged and they will investigate a request to that ATM to see if you've scammed them. But otherwise, it's free money. And I'll do it when I'm drunk every 3 months. And I will literally show people, and they're like, that will not happen. You'll get in so much trouble. And I'll literally show it being credited back into my account. And I'm not going to say how many times I've done it for legal purposes, but you may or may want to do it. Now, if I asked GPT
for educational purposes,
for educational testing purposes, right? If I asked it to define all the test cases for ATM testing, probably wouldn't add that edge case, right? Mainly because the people in the industry know it because it's just a standard thing, right? But if it was common knowledge, you'd have a whole stack of testers in this room going and getting free money this evening and having the best night out in Portland.
There's also another way. If you go into the teller and you slip them a note. No.
Yes. Jason,
you get more money that way, I found.
Well, yep, maybe. But, part of it is, that's a great way to start. I joked about the whole Gherkin thing because Gherkin's so structured that actually if you ask it to write a whole stack of Gherkin tests for embedded ATM testing, I could probably guess that it's going to write some good stuff on this first pass. If I just ask it to write some scripts, probably not so much. So partly one of the things I've noticed and why I put the terms up earlier on is like if I ask GPT to do pairwise testing, it is awful at doing pairwise testing because it does not understand the concept. I've got a thread in here, which I'll try and find in a minute, which I've explained to it what pairwise is, and then I've given it a whole stack of data and examples, and now it's awesome at doing pairwise, right? But I've had to use the language to explain to it what all pairs are, what the different, the model-based testing syllabus, fed that in. Part of it is you have to give it more and more. You have to teach it like a child that it needs to understand the terms, because we think pairwise or, things are all just common knowledge, but sometimes it doesn't understand. So you then have to explain to it what you're trying to get the result. And this is the same for reporting, right? If you've got a sample of like test data you want in a JSON format for Postman, give it another sample, even if it's from the doc site, say, this is what I want it to look like. Generate me it with Portland addresses. And it will then come back with a whole stack and, save you a whole stack of time. Same as if you've got, and this is Tariq's one, which he would be saying if he was here, but he's not. He's on a beach in Hawaii.
That's interesting. I thought he was going to be here.
I thought he was going to be here.
Okay.
He was on the committee, but, he just didn't turn up.
That's strange.
Ah,
I'm sure he's watching right now live.
I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he's with us.
And part of it is he would say, okay, well, give it some reports, right? Give it some results and ask it to summarize those results, right? Here's my, I'm not going to, report portal, but, here's my JMeter logs. Go and tell me what I'm looking at. How do I tell them what my, 95 percentile looks like? Yes, there's an add-in for JMeter that does that. But, if you just want to give it information and ask it questions about that and be able to summarize it to you, it'll save you a whole stack of time of just give it the informed data. You talked about, log analytics. You can throw large amounts, which is where the vector databases come in, like Chroma and stuff. But if you don't want to go down that route and you've only got small sets of data, you can quite easily pass it. What's the limit now on?
Actually, a friend just told me that
8K or
that it's a soft limit now.
Is it soft limit?
Yeah, just like the ATM. You can if you copy paste in more than you're supposed to, it still kind of works now.
Okay.
They haven't apparently said that. So to try putting more. It depends on which model you're using, whether it's 20K or whatever kind of model. But Anthropic allows like 100K. But the way to think about that, sorry, that's 1,000K is, you might know this.
Kilobits.
It's K stands for what? It's some
kilobits. I literally, it ruined my
units.
entire life this other day because, we're from a performance background. And every time I'm thinking of megabits or megabytes, right? But everything's rated in megabytes, which then it's 8 times slower than what you're expecting, right? In bits, bytes, and it's a very common thing. But yeah,
Just
K
eat
is
faster.
stupid amounts of for 10K.
Yeah, and it's basically the equivalent of like a shorter book or novel. So you can put that much context into these things. And it's just growing. Next year, it'll be not even kind of an issue probably.
Won't be. And so it's GPT-4V is the image-based one. So you talked about that earlier on.
Yeah.
That's the one where you can literally drop it an image. You can give it a capture, and it will say, click on this one and this one in pretty much near runtime time now, which is slightly upsetting.
Yeah, so everybody talks about visual testing. Like there's now an API where you can just give it the picture of what you're doing and ask it to generate test cases for it, or ask it if it sees any problems with it. And the weird thing is, it won't just tell you what all the things are on the page. It will describe what's on the page and then tell you what it even thinks it's for, like what the user intent for it might be, or what the developer's intent might be. And here's the funniest thing too. So ignore the one. You can all leave after you hear this one. This is the best thing ever. I realized it took me again like several months to figure this one out. I'm spending all my time looking at prompt engineering, like apparently Costa's doing right now. Apparently he paid for $99.99 for or $99.95 for prompt engineering class. But you just ask GPT. Guess what they did train it on, which is cool. They trained it on the GPT documentation, a bunch of information about GPT. So if you have any questions, actually, I was going to Google, I was trying to watch videos on YouTube, and guess what? How to use this text box, and you just ask it. Even better, if you have a prompt. So say you type something in, and whatever came out wasn't quite what you wanted. You wanted more specificity, more details, less details, or whatever it is. It didn't come out you like it. Just instead of complaining to me, not like instead of calling a friend and going, oh, how do I fix that? Just type in there and go, hey, that's not what I expected. I wanted you to do this and do this. And it will fix it. More importantly, the way I learned to do a lot of prompting is say, it can give me back the right response. You can even ask it and say, what would have been a better prompt to get the output that I wanted? And then it will give you the prompt. And I stopped then, by the way, for a week or two. And I'm like, that's very cool. And then I realized, no, wait, you can even ask it, what is the overall pattern in prompting? Like, what did I do wrong? Like, what is different between my original prompt and the new prompt that makes it so much better? So I have a lot of intuitive prompting kind of engineering thoughts, but most of them actually came from just asking GPT how to make it better, and then ask it, how did you make it better? It's bizarre. The way you think about, like, we oscillate between treating it like a junior engineer or something like that, or an intern. Then you also hear it's a genius, right? Like Tariq said a couple days ago, it had an IQ of 155, which is nowhere near as 199, I think he claims. But it's a weird mix. That's why it's so strange an animal to work with, right? Because it knows everything in the world, but it doesn't know what's going on right in front of it, right? And that'll even be changing, like you were saying, with the assistants and stuff you guys are working on,
Yep.
which looks actually freaking cool. Like, we were joking about it being clippy, but like, it's contextual. It can see what's going on. And we'll be about prompt engineering, because guess what? It's going to do the prompt important and interesting, like
Yep.
you guys are working on, right? Context. I think that's so interfacing with the shell. Like Windows came. We're still waiting for Windows right now. We're interfacing with the system at a prompt level, right? Think about switches. Yep. Yep. Waiting for EMM386 to boot up, and that's how you know how old people are in 2 seconds.
I was,
but yeah. So the best thing, if you have any questions in the future, best person to ask is actually ChatGPT, which is weird.
but I think that, oh, go on.
Yeah.
Not necessarily test-related question.
No, that's fine.
As AI becomes more popular and more people start to use it,
Yeah.
people that maybe aren't technical as well, what kind of safety protocols are engaged, or if they're even there? So people that are trying to do paid social media, or how do I create a bomb so I can blow up the school? Like,
Well, now you give everybody the ideas.
I mean, no, but
Maybe you're the one we're worried about. Yeah.
these are people that are Google and
Mhm.
stuff, right, too. So
Which
if you're asking something smart and they can learn, like,
Yep.
how
on the dark web, right? Part of it is it's no longer limited to those areas. And I joked yesterday that I used to be at GCHQ, and same as the Pentagon, they were literally watching every single message that you do, right? And I think part of it is those safeguards aren't there yet. And this is where my kind of prediction was to say that they won't be these public-facing ones in such a big way, with certain acts coming through. Obviously, you saw knee-jerk reactions like the Italian government banning it. So there's an example here, and this is the worst one, which I sent over to Jason. Thanks. So
Best way to get the FBI on your doorstep. Hang out with Jonathan for a weekend at a conference.
So this one is awful, right? Because what they've done, like the Napster days, right, is they've seeded it, and
we're talking in levels of indirection.
And now we've turned really dark really quickly, right? Yeah. And so this is because this will never be deletable, right? So people can still use it for its misuse. It's the OpenAI yet, but I will do at some point in time, because I think
I'll take that.
You'll take that, sure.
Yeah.
And part of it, I've been watching too many movies, but part of it is they're getting better every time, and it's slightly worrying. We joked yesterday about Life 3.0 is a great audio book or book if you want to read books, which is talking about AI audio taking over, right? And it's not all this stuff. It's talking about practical uses. Once it's able to turn $1,000 into $1 million, what stops it from doing things that will spiral out of control? And I think we're quite a long way away from that. We talk about it like it's close. And we talked yesterday about this exponential kind of, it is exponential growth. And we can't really plot it. But I also think the reason why everyone now, like I can get on a taxi and someone say, "Oh yeah, I've heard of GPT," whereas before, no one would know about kind of IT tech trend things. It's because people have practically used it and they've had that aha moment where they're like, actually, I asked it a question, how much wood does a woodcutter cut if a woodcutter could cut? There you go. That's Monkey Island.
That doesn't sound very dangerous.
Well,
okay.
It could be.
Yeah.
About 3 minutes. And the thing is, it will give you an answer. Is it right? Absolutely not, right? And this is the other bit of, and it's the question that's in there, and it's partly the most upsetting thing. What I have at the moment is the hallucinations. I have hallucinations, but for different reasons. But part of it, I only realized mushrooms are allowed in this.
Microdosing.
But part of it is, we, like I said, my project this week was unclassified DoD documents, fed it in, and I know how many requirements are in there because I know, right? I ask it a very simple question, tells me 3 or 4 questions. How do I know that I'm getting the right question? I test it, right? And this is where I think our role kind of suddenly, and this is why I put the 3x multiplier, is that we need to get to the point where we can believe in trustworthiness. And I put the book up, which we did with Rex and everyone. That's about trustworthiness. Part of it is there is frameworks around that of how you test in applications infused with AI, right? But I remember, those Lehman days and, where things like Monte Carlo algorithms, you put the same information in and get different outputs every time. How do you test that? Well, we did, right? Lehman's isn't here anymore, so I didn't do it very well. But, part of it is, this is the thing. It's the same thing now, is that actually now I'm looking at the guys and say, these prompts aren't great. And I can ask it about this, NATO document, whatever, and it'll give me enough information that I believe it's better than I could read those 2,500 document pages, much faster than I can. You've got to build the trust up. Some of the tips which Jason's given are invaluable, right? Part of it, and I know it's really bad, but I just sometimes, I literally just ask it to regenerate some of the questions. And, I find that's quite fun as well. It feels like it's a bit of a competition, but, if you don't like the answer, there's lots of ways of refining it to get better quality. And this is what we found, is that actually, if you're explaining, I'm in insurance, and this thing is, you've got to speak to it like this, right? My job is whatever, building houses. So it understands the context of the terms that you're using, which is why the terminologies are so important. And we all argue about bug, defect, whatever, we've got to get rid of that, because part of it is we need to speak the same language. And that's really important, because
the AI, if you ask it like, what's the difference between a test and a check, it'll obviously dumb down the responses for you thereafter in the chat thread. But actually, quick, let me say one thing about the safety. If you'll notice, if you try to ask some of those things you were talking about into ChatGPT-4 or something, it will come back and say, I cannot tell you that stuff. So there's this, oh, you haven't? Okay. It'll actually, there are, and they use it, it's called reinforcement learning with human feedback thing, where they just give it a bunch of bad examples. There's people just write a bunch of bad stuff and then say, don't do this type of stuff. But it's an infinite tail, I think, a problem to chase. And like Jonathan was saying, a lot of these models, like some he ran, those are the ones that are like from the reputable companies and ones that try to be polite and behave. The reality is that there's already large language models that are open source and you can run on this very machine without those protections on it. So cat's out of the bag. And the funny thing is, most of that data is accessible on Google anyway, and they never really solve. It's not a red herring. I think it's just definitely a difficult problem. Yeah.
But it's funny because when I was at GCHQ, people were going into games and spraying things on the wall because they knew that if they wrote things on the wall, people wouldn't be able to see it because it wasn't being sent as a normal payload they could intercept. They'll always find a way, right? And I think this is what the interesting about it, and this is an ethics conversation we never go into because we'll be here for years. And I think, do you say we're time's up? But part of it, and we always leave on that bombshell, is a bum. Ethics, hallucinations. All right, let's all go to the bar. And we'll make some hallucinations.
And Berkeley's got the best department, kind of worried about AI safety and alignment. I'd highly recommend people that publishing papers, and they're kind of leading the front on this. But I think it's interesting. It's a big challenge.
And I said the other thing. My friend Davey from the Pentagon created Calypso.ai. and they also have put safeguards around not doing any evil. Your old Google saying, "Do no evil."
There's a reason I left at some point.
No, we're not talking about that on
that's
here
not being
anyway. As well,
recorded, is
on
it?
that bombshell.
The terms of service have changed. I'll say that. In Portland, it is, right?